Okay, we're starting down below this upper deck that has slate on it. And the reason being is I want to show you the drains there. Okay, there's 3 of them. And obviously the purpose is for any water that gets on top of the deck is to come out on that drain. And I'll zoom in a little bit. Now, what you don't see, if you were to draw a line from that drain to the next drain, a straight line, what you should have there is an area for the water to come out that's underneath the slate. If not, it all backs up under the installation, and when we walk up top, you're going to see what happens. So here's the slate. As I said, it's a 2nd level, and you can probably tell in the picture, maybe not, but it does have pitch, meaning that from the house all the way down to the drain, and I haven't put a level on the corners to know if that's sloping from this corner to this drain, but I do definitely see a slope from the house to the drains. Now the problem is, you see in the very bottom there, that green kind of flashing? Well, below that it's all locked in. There's no drainage. So any water that gets into the tile that doesn't run off the top and soaks in, like this piece, it starts coming up through the bottom and starts eating away slate in the tile. And one thing to keep in mind about slate's nothing but pressed mud. So if it's sitting in saturated water, this is what you're going to get. And you can see it's all around the deck. Now a little thing I'm going to point out too is somebody else came up here and put a sealer on the grout joints. You notice how it's a little darker on the edges? That's a coating sealer. Now, quite honestly, in this situation, a coating sealer is not a bad idea if it was brand new. But now, all that's doing is trapping more moisture underneath and going to cause it to eat the tile even more. And just to show you that this place does get a lot of water, you can see what the water's done to that wood right there. Okay, so our attempt is, before, this thing should actually be ripped out. It's almost beyond repair because you're not going to stop it. It's going to keep deteriorating like a cancer. You can see the color over here too, where they had a mat where it actually held up pretty well, because obviously none of the elements got to it. What we're going to do is we're going to pressure wash it, and we're going to do a little agitating with a stiff brush to get off as much of this loose stuff as possible. And it's not a problem because it's slate all the way through. So if I take some of that off, not a big deal, and it's going to come off anyhow. So we're going to remove as much as we can. We're going to let this thing dry out for a week because we did have a little bit of rain, and then we're going to come back and put an enhancing penetrating sealer on this whole thing with the object of sealing it to keep more moisture from coming out, but it's breathable, so it allows the moisture to come out of whatever is trapped underneath it. And being an enhancing sealer, it's going to add some color to it. It's a band-aid, quite honestly. It'll buy maybe a couple more years or so of this deck before it's going to have to be replaced. Now, last thing I'm going to show you, it's over here by Isaac, is on the steps. And I get what they did here, but they shouldn't have. You see this caulking? They did there because the water was coming out and staining the copper. But that's exactly what you want to happen, is you want the water to come out right here and drain down so it doesn't stay on top. Which is why they're having the issues up top. There's no area where below the tile where the water soaks in here, goes all the way down to here. Now, because that wall is, because this wall on the deck part is right up against the tile, it has nowhere to go, and the water just backs up, and it's a big puddle underneath there. Okay, now what's interesting right here I want to point out is, see where the water's beating? That's where the previous sealer was put on, and that's a good thing. And the reason it's working there versus like right on the edge here, see where it's gone darker orange, it's soaked in, it's not beating? Where it's beating up is where a floor mat was. And so the sealer couldn't get broken down by the UV lighting or the rain because it had something covering it. My reason for pointing this out is sealers don't last more than a year or two outside. And if you don't redo it, you're going to have issues like we're having on this deck. Okay, now I know it doesn't seem, perhaps from the video here, like it's doing much, but actually it looks beautiful. Of course it's lighter because we haven't enhanced it, but it's even looking, and a lot of the dirt is off the grout joints, and we got the flakiness off. So where you see it wet with the water, when we come back to seal it, that's going to bring the color back. Looking good. We're going to do the whole deck. So here's the deck, fully dry. We let it dry almost a week to get out as much moisture as possible. So all of it is, most of it, if not all the loose stuff, is off, and it looks much better, even though it's still kind of on the dull side. The enhancing sealer will take care of that. But just to show you how much of the slate we had to take off, you can see areas like here where it wore, and actually the grout joint's sticking higher than the tile. But we'll get this enhanced up, and it'll look fantastic. Here's more evidence that there's water underneath this slate because there's no place for it to go outside this wall. And what happens is the water evaporates, leaves behind the minerals. Now, Manas is going to go ahead and brush those to show you how you can take it off with a brush. But the problem is, some of it still sticks inside the grout joint. And we could go all day long trying to clean that with more water, but then that's just going to bring up more efflorescence. So what we'll probably do is just a very light acidic solution, and we'll slightly dip it in the brush just to clean off the surface. And then when we enhance it, that'll all blend in. But this is what's causing the problem on this deck. There's water underneath the system that's eating away the slate. So there are different enhancing sealers you can use. This is our favorite to use with something like slate that's extremely porous. It's made by Aquamix. It's a stone enhancer. It's a penetrating sealer, so it goes inside, nothing sits on top. I may have mentioned it before, but I'm not an advocate of coating sealers, especially outside. And you'll see a link on here to our store if you want to purchase this through us. So the first thing we're doing is we're edging it with a brush. And the reason for that is we really don't want to get anything on the stucco there because it could enhance too. So it's just an easier way of applying it. And what Armando's doing is he's getting it wet. You don't want to be too dry. And then again, on the other hand, you don't want to flood it, but you definitely want to have it where the whole surface is wet. And you can see how it really adds color. And with this enhancer being the solvent base, what's nice is it takes about 1 to 3 minutes. We can leave it on here up to 5 or 10, but it goes pretty quick, and then it can come back and wipe it off. And then this is a preferred method we like, is the roller. We can get a good amount on there. You can see as he's going how it adds color. And then the reason for the brush is to be able to hit the grout joints, because we do want to make sure those grout joints get sealed too. So he'll roll it on, then he might use the brush just to kind of brush it into the grout joints. But you see how he's put a nice thin application on there, but it's nice and wet. The big thing with enhancers is timing. Like right now it's probably 65 degrees, the sun's out, Southern California weather. If it gets hotter, like this is a small area we're doing right now, but they can do bigger areas. But if it gets hotter, then we have to work in smaller areas and keep it wet. You don't want the sealer to dry on top of the slate. In just a few minutes, what Mondo's going to do is he's actually going to buff it with that white terry towel in his hand. And then we also have a machine we use. You want to get all the excess sealer off of that slate. You don't want to let it dry on top. If you do, you'll possibly get a white looking residue. It'll be very sticky, and it's hard to remove. So we get these cotton towels by the bag full, and they work really well. So before we go and do the whole deck, you can see what a huge difference between without the enhancer and with the enhancer. And then I'm going to take another shot here after Armando buffs that, because right now it almost looks shiny. That's just because the sealer's wet. Enhancing sealers are not meant to be shiny, or I should say penetrating enhancing sealers are not meant to be shiny. So I'm going to show you a little orbital machine we use from Auric, but if you don't have one, you can do what Armando's doing right here, which is use a cotton towel, and you can see the difference where he's wiped. It's real shiny where the sealer's still at, but once he wipes it up, it'll take the sheen away, and he'll do a final one after that too. This is probably one of the best machines we ever bought. It's an orbital. It's made by Auric. And it just does a great job of taking up any excess sealer completely. And you can see how there's a very slight satin finish, but it's not meant to be shiny. If you're shiny, you have too much sealer on there. So there's the finished product. And as again, you can see it adds color compared to what's already there, but it's not shiny. Shinies are very problematic coating sealers outside. Now this is a really beat up, damaged deck that we're trying to salvage for another year or two. It's going to have to be replaced. Yours probably won't be this bad. But some of the things to point out, because again, depending on the condition, but you can see right there how it's still kind of whitish on the slate, and some areas are a little darker. It looks better, but that's just some damage that's not going to be covered. And just a little bit of the efflorescence is still in the grout joints. Once we're done sealing this whole deck, I can easily do a very light, mild acid wash on those and get that off, and then just touch up with sealer. So here's the finished product, and I don't want to walk on it yet. I want to let it dry a little bit, but you can definitely see how much nicer the color is. And even better in this situation is the protection from the enhancing sealer, the penetrating enhancing sealer.